Within minutes of hearing the news, Marcia arrived with tea and muffins. And an empathetic, I've been there too, listening ear. The two of them sat there all morning, just talking, just listening. Within a week, Marcia and Chuck showed up with $200 worth of meat from Angel Foods meat that would be the core of the meals for the family in the weeks ahead. That was how Chuck and Marcia caught this family on the bounce. Just because they knew what it was like to be in the same situation, to get the same news, to experience the same fears. What they didn't know was that a second tragedy would strike a week later to the same family, a family that was part of their broader faith family, that they worked together with in ministry. 2 unexpected tragedies in a week. But Chuck and Marcia were there in heart and in body to catch them on the bounce. An email. It wasn't a tragedy, but it was a bounce nonetheless. Another family living their lives outside the church, but feeling the gentle tug of the Spirit. In this case, catching them on the bounce meant taking the time to answer an email full of deep faith questions. The time for coffee and listening without judgment. Making them feel not just invited, but welcome. That email from Courtney turned into a coffee, and then that turned into attending Lenten services at another church with her, and eventually it turned into a new members class where she and Adam realized they needed to make a change in their lives. That led to courageously standing in front of the congregation to make a promise of celibacy until marriage. A year later, that wedding took place right here in this sanctuary. It was the first one that I officiated as a pastor. That wedding led to another email and another coffee, and deep questions of Courtney's feeling the calling into pastoral ministry. That led to years of study, juggling a large blended family, a full-time job, and great personal sacrifices, and all that led to the culmination yesterday afternoon, when I had the profound privilege of placing my hand on top of her head and praying a prayer of endowment over a newly ordained Reverend Courtney Sweet. It was a momentous day for Courtney and her family, but over in the shadow of her triumph was another momentous day too. The day my first protege had become another pastor. A day that was born in catching someone on the bounce through something as simple as genuinely answering an email and then doing life together as a neighbor who became a friend. Blood and violence. Today we grieve with the all too many families who have cratered into the deep loss and grief in El Paso, Texas, the city of my birth. Now added to the long list of victims of what seems to be yet more white supremacist, hate-filled violence. This morning we add Dayton, Ohio, to that list of cities violently wounded, with families torn apart, needlessly, senselessly. But it isn't to that same human violence that the God and creator of the universe entered into human existence. To live as a way of revealing God's heart to us. To die as a way of saving us from our violence. Blood and violence is the way that God submitted to catching us on the bounce. All of us. It was a love so profound that it submitted to dying rather than inflicting violence on God's enemies. That's us. All of us. was so much more than simply an invitation. God made us feel welcome again. And it's that welcome, that sacrificial act of love that we gather together to observe and celebrate this morning. A love that didn't care what denomination we are, what nationality or race we are, what gender or political affiliation we have. At this table we come together, unified in love, not because of anything that we've done to deserve it. That's grace, by the way. But because of everything that God did to catch all of us on the bounce, so that we wouldn't die after we craved it. So let us gather now at this table. Let us gather in love and unity. Let us trust in hope. Let us hope in life. And let us catch one another